All right, let's dive into a really critical question for anyone building on the cloud. How do you handle all that heavy lifting that has to happen behind the scenes? We're going to break down how you can pick the perfect champion for your background compute jobs right inside Azure.
So, picture this. Your application has to chew through terabytes of data, maybe generate thousands of reports, or sync these massive data sets every single night. Is your current setup groaning under the weight? Yeah, this is a super common challenge for developers and architects alike.
And let's be totally clear, these aren't just little side tasks. These jobs are often absolutely mission critical. I mean, they're processing sales data, handling financial transactions, updating user profiles. When these jobs fail, the business feels it, big time. So picking the right tool, it isn't just a tech choice, it's a business critical one.
So with that in mind, let's meet the contenders. Azure gives you this powerful toolbox for these exact kinds of tasks. And you really should think of it like a specialist's toolkit, not a one-size-fits-all hammer. We're going to look at 3 main options today, and each one has its own unique superpower.
First up, we have Azure Batch. This is your heavy lifter, your heavyweight champion. Think massive, massive scale. We're talking parallel processing or high-performance computing, what you often hear called HPC. It's designed to spin up and manage a whole fleet of virtual machines to just crush huge data sets all at once.
Next, we have Azure Functions. And if Batch is the heavyweight, Functions are the nimble, lightning-fast specialist. I mean, this is serverless at its absolute best. You just give it a small snippet of code, and it runs instantly when something happens, like a new file appears or a message lands in a queue. You never, ever have to think about the server underneath. It's just magic.
And our third contender is Azure Logic Apps. Now this one is the master orchestrator, the conductor of the cloud orchestra. Logic Apps are all about creating workflows. They are the glue that connects all these different services, both inside Azure and outside of it, using this really cool visual, low-code designer to automate even the most complex business processes.
So we have our 3 champions, Batch, Functions, Logic Apps. How in the world do we choose between them? Well, the first, and honestly the most important question you have to ask yourself is this: what starts my job? And that leads us to the core distinction between 2 fundamental types of work.
And this slide just breaks it down perfectly. On one hand, you've got scheduled work. It's predictable. It runs like clockwork. Think, run this report every single night at 2 a.m., no exceptions. But on the other hand, you have event-driven work. This is purely reactive. It just sits there, waiting, and it doesn't run until something else happens. A new file gets uploaded, an email arrives, a database record changes, it reacts to the world around it.
And here's your cheat sheet. This table maps our services directly to those triggers. You can see Azure Batch is really built for those massive scheduled jobs. But Azure Functions and Logic Apps, they totally excel in that event-driven world, reacting in an instant. Honestly, this table right here is your #1 decision-making tool to get started.
But, okay, choosing a service isn't just about the trigger. I mean, for any real-world production system, you've got to think about what happens when things go wrong, and how do you monitor the system? And of course, how much is this all going to cost me?
Yeah, reliability is absolutely crucial. What happens if a service you depend on is down for a minute? You need automatic retries. And what if a task fails over and over again? You can't let it block up the whole system. That's where something called a dead letter queue, or a DLQ, comes in. It's like a safety net, a place to put failed items so you can look at them later. These are the kinds of built-in features you need to look for.
And then there's observability. It's a simple rule. If you can't see it, you can't fix it. You need logs, metrics, alerts. You have to understand the health of your background jobs. Now, the good news here is that all 3 of these services plug directly into Azure Monitor, which gives you that single pane of glass to see everything that's going on. Finally, let's talk money. Cost is a huge differentiator here. With Azure Batch, you're basically paying for the virtual machine's uptime. If it's running, you're paying. But with Functions and Logic Apps, it's a totally different serverless model. You pay per execution or per action, often for just fractions of a penny. You're literally only paying for what you use when you use it. Okay, we've covered a lot of theory. Now let's get practical. Let's see how all of this comes together in reusable patterns that you can actually use in your own projects. Think of this as your playbook for success. So let's go all the way back to our first problem, that massive nightly job. How would you solve it by combining these services? Well, check this out. A Logic app can kick the whole thing off with a simple schedule trigger. Then it calls Azure Batch, our heavyweight champ, to do the real data crunching across tons of machines. And once Batch is done, the Logic app can take over again for the final step, like sending a success email. See, that is orchestration in action. Okay, now for a totally different pattern. Real-time processing. Imagine you need to resize an image the instant it gets uploaded. This is a perfect job for an Azure function. The function is just sitting there, waiting, triggered by the file upload to blob storage. It runs its code in milliseconds, saves the thumbnail, and it's done. It's simple, it's incredibly efficient, and it is perfectly event-driven.
So look, if you take just one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this. The secret to modern cloud architecture. It is not about finding one magical service that does everything. No way. It's about being a master composer, intelligently combining the strengths of multiple specialized services to build something that's robust, scalable, and cost-effective.
And that pretty much brings us to the end. So now, I'll turn the question to you. Think about your own systems. What's that one manual, clunky, or unreliable background task you can finally automate using some of these patterns? Go on and build something great. Thanks for watching.